Hello neighbors, it's Brad here at Etrailer, and today we're taking a look and installing the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited. Now this is what your hitch is going to look like when it's installed, and from the factory there's already a nice little notch where the hitch is going to go, and it's going to utilize some of the factory mounting points. It gives it a nice clean look because really you do see the bracket under here, but on a Jeep you're really not going to see it that much, especially with the spare tire. Now this is a 2" by 2" receiver tube opening, which is going to open it up to a ton of different accessories. Whether you're looking at ball mounts, bike racks, or cargo carriers, you're going to have tons of options. All of them are going to stay in place with a 5/8 pin and clip. Now, this is not included with the hitch, but a lot of times when you pick up accessories, they'll have those included. If you plan on leaving your accessories on your Jeep, you can pick up a locking pin and clip, which is really nice because you can lock that in and know that no one's going to be able to walk away with those accessories. And we have tons of those available here at Etrailer. If you plan on towing a trailer with your hitch, you have a plate-style safety chain loop, and your standard S-hook, it's a little tight here to kind of put it at an angle, but it is still able to be put on there. And your larger clevis style will also go on. It's a little tricky as far as angle, but you can see it is able to be attached. Now, speaking of towing, you're going to want to adhere to the weight capacities of this hitch, which this one, our gross trailer weight rating, which is going to be the weight of the trailer plus the accessories loaded up, comes in at 3,500 pounds. We also have a tongue weight rating of 350 pounds, and that's going to be your suspended accessories or the weight that's put on the inside of the receiver tube opening. And with 350 pounds, that's pretty decent to be able to get a 4-bike rack or a cargo carrier pretty well loaded up. Now, something to keep in mind with the Jeeps is you can use a weight distribution hitch here. That's going to bump those numbers up. So if you do need a little bit more capacity, you can look into that. It's going to bump the gross trailer weight rating to 4,000 pounds and the tongue weight up to 400. Now, also with the spare tire in place, you may want to look at a hitch extender. That way you can hook up to a trailer without your spare tire getting in the way. And you're also going to want to check the vehicle's owner's manual to see what the Jeep is capable of towing, and then compare that with the hitch as well as any components that you'll be using. With the hitch installed, you can see that the center of the hitch pin hole is slightly recessed from the rear bumper. Now this is an aftermarket bumper. They also have some 35-inch tires on here. So this will be a little bit different if yours is completely factory. But really what it comes down to is making sure that when you pick an accessory that folds up, like a bike rack or cargo carrier, that it has that clearance. So you are going to want to pick up a hitch extender. You're going to want to measure from pretty much where this hitch pin is to the furthest point and just make sure that you're able to fold that up. Jeeps do get a little bit tricky with that because of the tire. And our ground clearance here is going to be maybe skewed because of those 35s, but on this one here, looks like we're coming in with 21 inches of ground clearance. So this is going to be important if you are planning on picking up a ball mount, because you can measure the coupler of your trailer, compare it with that 21 inches that we have on this one, and then you can determine that rise or drop necessary to make sure that your trailer is nice and level. When it comes to the installation of this hitch, it's really easy. To begin our installation, we're going to check underneath our bumper where our hitch is going to go, and some models will have a bracket that's already installed. It's got some factory hardware, and we're going to need to take that hardware out. It may get a little bit tight because the muffler is here, and that's also going to kind of get in the way of when we put the hitch in place to get that hardware passed through. So you may or may not want to lower down your muffler. You could probably get away with not doing it, but to make it a little bit easier, we'll lower it down. And this is just held up by some exhaust isolators, which are going to be rubber. We're going to have one that's on each side of the muffler. So what I'll do is grab a pry bar and some soapy water, and we'll get those popped off. Now the soapy water is going to just kind of help lubricate this. Sometimes you'll get some dust and dirt just kind of built into these, and it gets a little bit tricky. But you can pry on the top or bottom here. So I'm using a large pry bar. If you have a long flathead screwdriver, that's also going to work. So trying to find a nice leverage point to get this pried off is going to be key. So let's try to go off this bracket here. And you can pop off the top or bottom. It doesn't really matter. Sorry. To tell you the truth, really just with one of these popped off the passenger side, this drops down enough to where we have enough clearance, so we could probably leave it like this. We know that the two outer holes for the hitch are going to reuse those weld nuts and that bracket, but we do want to take our new bolts and make sure that they pass through nice and easy. That way when we're raising our hitch up, we can get these slid in. So just kind of take your bolt, pass it through. Sometimes just a little bit of tolerance issues. A lot of times with Jeeps, you're going to find that the metal's just slightly off, making it a little bit tough. This one is catching a little bit, but it is able to pass through. If yours isn't able to, you may need to enlarge these holes. So I have a burr bit, and that way you can kind of just grind out a small little bit for the bolt to pass through. Hopefully yours allows you to pass it through without having to do that, but if you are getting that issue, you might want to just grind that out a little bit. You could also use a larger drill bit and just kind of waller that out a little bit, enough to where you can get this past. We're going to take that bracket and our hitch, and we're going to raise this up in place and have your factory bolts that we've removed handy. That way we can kind of get this started on each side. It'll hold everything up in place. Now the hitch goes in between the bracket, so make sure the bracket's on that outside there. And it might help to kind of get this aligned so you can see the holes aligned with the hitch, and then you can slide your bracket in place. So we're just going to pass this through and then just kind of get these hand tight on each side. Just get a few threads started on those weld nuts, enough to hold the hitch in place. And we'll get both of these started. So with our two factory bolts holding this in place, we'll go ahead, grab our new hardware, and we're going to take our bolt, put a flat washer on here, and have your serrated flange nut ready. And we're going to pass this in the same way that we passed our other bolts through. So I'll go ahead, and I'm just going to get this hand tight as well. We're going to go ahead and snug these down. We're going to come back with a torque wrench pretty shortly after this, so you don't have to get crazy. We just want this snugged up to save ourselves a little bit of wrenching away with the torque wrench. Those factory bolts, again, are going to be 18 millimeters. Our new hardware is going to be a 3/4 inch socket and ratchet combo, and that's to keep the head of the bolt in place as we tighten down the nut side. So we'll go through, get these all snugged down. For torquing down the hardware, you're going to find the torque setting in the instruction manual, and they don't have a torque setting for those weld nut bolts. I'm going to just use the same one as I'm using for the new hardware, and that should be fine. Now, normally I try to use a torque wrench on the nut side. That's going to give you a better torque. It's just going to be better overall, but it is pretty tight here in the bumper, so I am going to be using the head of the bolt. So we'll go through, we'll get this in place, and then we'll put our wrench on the nut side, and then we'll get this tightened down. Now, if you need a torque wrench, we have these available here at Etrailer. You can generally go to an auto parts store and rent one for free. This is going to make sure that long term, it's going to be tight enough, obviously for the hitch to stay in place, but also not too tight, putting stress on our weld nuts or any of the hardware. Now, with all those torqued down, our hitch is officially installed, so we'll just get our exhaust put back in place. So just take that isolator, slide it back on. And that was a look and installation of the CURT Trailer Hitch receiver on a 2024 Jeep Wrangler Unlimited.